Good morning from a very sunny New Forest here in Hampshire. We had a bit of a rainy day. Was it Saturday? It was raining?
Saturday was a bit rainy. Friday night was really bad. And of course, on Friday's live broadcast, it hailed down and we were in the barn.
That's right. Friday was wet. And then things have improved again now. It's very warm here at the moment. I'm regretting the fleece. And you may have noticed that it looks like I haven't brushed my hair. I'm not becoming slovenly at all. It's just that, frankly, it's got to the stage when it needs a cut. So,
oh yes, this is my time to shine. I think.
Shine.
Oh yeah, I feel like we're gonna go back to some kind of 80s do.
Oh my goodness!
I might get the hair dye
anyway,
out.
It's got to that point where someone is going to have to turn some scissors to it, and I'm not going to be able to do it myself. So that does mean that the responsibility is going to fall to you.
I'm so happy.
Last week we were watching the ospreys in Poole Harbour. Fantastic webcam set up there. We were watching a female that had returned and had started nest building and was waiting for an absent male. Now, I must admit, I let it lapse a little bit over the weekend. We know there have been other ospreys in the area. Another unringed bird was seen flying over. The female went to check it out, but nothing happened. It just carried on flying, so clearly not interested. There were other birds around, again, unknown individuals, but we can keep our eyes on that webcam this week. Remember, if the male does turn up, or a male does turn up, pretty quickly now in order to get this breeding process going. It will be the first time they will have bred in the south of England for 200 years. Everything is crossed down here on the south coast. Down on the south coast.
Oh, wouldn't it be amazing? Come on, she's still on the nest, just waiting for that one male. So last week we brought you the bird song from Sound Approach UK. We're encouraging you to get onto Twitter, like them at Sound Approach UK, and we'd still ask you to please go and do that because they're still posting every single day. However, this week we're going to switch it up a little bit and we are going to go over to Lucy Lapwing, who's going to give us a little bit of a lesson in bird songs. If you're out in your garden and you're not sure what you're hearing, Lucy is fantastic at explaining exactly what the songs are and the speeches too. So have a look at this.
Hello, fellow self-isolators and nature lovers. Welcome to my garden. My name is Lucy and I'm a self-described nature nerd and just lover of all things wildlife generally. So whether it's fungi, whether it's invertebrates, whether it's wildflowers, I just find it all endlessly fascinating and I am obsessed with it. I do have a particular soft spot for our bird life, as I'm sure many of you do too. We're all quite used to watching birds, so we use things like their size and shape and colour, all these visual clues to work out what we're dealing with. Each day this week, I'm going to be bringing you a little mini lesson on how to identify birds using just these. So obviously it's spring at the moment, it's all kicking off, the birds are getting busy and getting down to it, and that peak, that absolute crescendo of birdsong is just around the corner, so it's the perfect time of year to learn birds by song. Now I'm going to be bringing you some really familiar garden faces and some hints and tips on how to identify them just by their voice. So the first one we're going to go into is a really familiar garden bird. I'm sure you all know him off by heart. I've been prepared as usual and I have made myself some props, so say hello to the blackbird. This is of course the handsome male with that black plumage that gives it its name, and he's got that golden eye ring and yellow beak to match. Just gorgeous. I'm going to play a song and talk over it and describe some little features to pick out to know that you're dealing with a blackbird when you hear him. So here we go. The first thing to listen to is that tone. It's deep, it's mournful, it's wistful almost. It's that deep sound that you've got to listen for. And the main feature here is the fact the blackbird sings for a little bit and then pauses. And then he sings for a little bit and then pauses. And the way I remember the blackbird is by imagining very specifically an old bloke whistling. I like to imagine my granddad in his garden, potting around, doing a bit of gardening, just whistling that tuneless whistle. And an individual blackbird song can vary quite a bit, but it's always that stop and start, that sing and that pause. So if you imagine that bloke whistling and listen for that sing and pause, often early in the morning and at dusk, hopefully you'll nail that blackbird. So that's the first bird song of this week that we're going to cover. Hopefully you can get that down quite quickly. So each day I'll be bringing you a new garden face and going through its song and teaching you how to remember it. I hope you've enjoyed, and I look forward to bringing you the next one tomorrow, no spoilers. And thank you for watching. Back to you guys in the New Forest.
Sounds like
That was
no,
awful.
it's more like the clangers than a blackbird. To be quite honest with you, much more like the clangers.
I love
But I
that.
like that idea of a slightly forgetful grandfather whistling in the garden.
Yeah.
Whistles a bit of the tune, and then blimey, you can't remember the rest. Oh no, it's come to me, and that's it. Top tip there from Lucy, more of her, and you can also follow her daily on Instagram, where she's giving updates to learning birdsong at Lucy Lapwing on Instagram.
Very, very good, isn't it? I love that sound of in the garden. But of course, this week we're also doing live webcams, aren't we?
Live webcams this week. Yeah, you've been watching those ospreys down in Poole Harbour, but across the world there are webcams just about everywhere, covering an enormous range of species. So we thought we'd show you a few of these that you might want to check into various points throughout the course of the day, so you can catch up not just on the UK's wildlife in the spring season, but also that from other species around the world. The first one we're going to go to is this one. It's a white-tailed eagle's nest, and it's in Latvia. Now, the Latvians have some fantastic nest cams. We're going to show you a couple more later in the week. They are really fantastic. But this one, as you can see, rather like the ospreys down in Poole, it's a beautiful picture. The eagles are already well into their breeding progress for this year. And you can catch this one on YouTube, I think. Yeah, YouTube. And they've got a whole range of them there. They do good stuff. Now, some of the webcams we're going to show you are in different time zones, so you won't be able to see them live when we're broadcasting in the morning. You'll have to wait until lunchtime or later, but it's well worthwhile. Had a good scan through yesterday, all sorts of things. Great grey owls, some jungle tanagers in South America. What else was there? Oh, all sorts of birds from the southern hemisphere as well, which was fantastic. It's their winter down there. Albatross on a webcam.
Oh,
Fantastic.
albatross on the webcam.
Anyway, these eagles are pretty sensational things.
Great thing to get an insight into it, as well, isn't it? So from that, we are going to head over to Skull of the Day. Now, we're doing it a little bit different. It's not the typical Skull of the Day that you were used to. Not last week, the week before. Of course, last week we had those kind of anagrams, didn't we, of those different animals and those different coloured patches, and we were trying to get you to guess
visual anagrams. That's right. That's
Visual
probably what they were. Yeah.
Exactly. So this week we are going back to Skull of the Day. However, we are doing UK mammals. So take a look at this skull. Have a look at the width. One of the biggest clues I can give you about this is the sagittal crest up the top here. That is a big, big giveaway. There's only one mammal in the UK which has a sagittal crest like that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there probably is. Certainly of that size. I can't
Of
think
this
of anything
size,
else. Yeah.
exactly. So, I mean, it's a very, very distinct skull. So get your answers in below, and we'll come back to that at the end of our
We've
broadcast.
started easy. They're going to get more difficult as we go through the week. But all UK mammals this week. Now, we like to feature young people on our broadcast. We've had a number of really top young people so far. It's now time to bring you Kabir Kaul. Now, Kabir is a remarkable young naturalist. He's an ambassador for the Cameron Bespoker Trust. Cameron Bespoker Trust works with young people to enable them to access wildlife, particularly birds. He's an RSPB youth counsellor. He's the London National Park champion, and last year he won the BTO's Marsh Award, the Young Marsh Award. He is a brilliant birder. I've had the pleasure of meeting him on a number of occasions. His enthusiasm is infectious. And here he is telling us what he's been getting up to during the lockdown.
Hi everyone, I'm Kabir, and I'd love to share with you a few things I've been doing during the lockdown. One of the main things I've been doing is birding from my bathroom window, and that's proved to be quite successful. Many of you will remember the recent influx of common scoters we've had, and I was lucky enough to hear them. I've also been brushing up on my bird calls, and that's allowed me to identify a willow warbler, which was a first for the garden, and you can hear them singing at this time of year. I've also recorded my sightings in my notebook, and I've recorded over 20 species. Now I'd love to show you a few things around my garden. This is my wildlife pond, and as you can see, it's a giant container. And these are available on wetland conservation websites such as WWT. And what's great about this particular pond is that there's no digging required, and it reenacts a real-life wetland. So it's got a shallow end, a deep end, and a lovely marshy area too, and it really stands out at this time of year. Now the pond has become residence to a frog and a newt, but unfortunately we've had a massive cat problem too. So to solve that, I got an RSPB cat deterrent. But don't worry, these do not harm cats, nor do they harm other garden wildlife, such as hedgehogs and birds. We've got a feeding station here too, with sunflower hearts, suet balls and table mix too, attracting many species. And these nest boxes here provide a home for blue and grey tits. Historically we have had a pair of blue tits nesting, and it was wonderful to see the fledglings fly out to start their new lives. And this camera trap over here has recorded the antics of the local foxes during the night. This is the ground feeder, and it acts as a safe refuge for the smaller birds to feed without disturbance from squirrels and London's parakeets. The buggy nibbles and the mealworms here attract a whole host of species, including robins, blue tits and also the occasional blackcap, which likes to bathe in the water source here. Self-isolation can be very hard, but I found that just looking for the birds and other wildlife around my garden has really improved my well-being, and I'm sure it'll improve yours too. So keep an eye out for the wildlife on your doorstep.
Fantastic.
So good.
I know, he's absolutely brilliant. He's so enthusiastic. Every time I've met Kabir, he's been just telling me loads of stuff, just flooding out of him, all of his enthusiasm, which is absolutely fantastic. You can follow him on Twitter at Call of the Wild. Now, it's not called C-A-L-L, it's K-A-U-L. That's his name. Call, K-A-U-L, of the Wild UK on Twitter. Follow him there and you'll catch up with all of his marvellous antics.
And they are marvellous.
Just go by.
So last week we had a new arrival, if you can remember. We had the birth of a little lamb, and I fell in love, didn't I?
Oh.
I've been going in and sitting with the lamb all the time. Oh my god, he is just so cute. So we have been running a competition called #NameThatLamb, which is my favourite thing.
Name that lamb.
Name that lamb.
Sounds like something Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer would have done, doesn't it? Name that lamb.
Name that lamb.
Name that lamb.
And lots of you have been sending in some great suggestions, and we've named it. We've narrowed it down to the top 4. So I think you should be seeing them up on the screen now. So get your comments and say which one you prefer.
Well,
and by the end of the broadcast,
we've got Sean.
We have Sean. We have Tigger. We have Cat.
Sean is what? Is that from the
Sean
Aardman?
Sheep.
Yeah.
Sean Sheep, you know?
Sorry, sort of cultural point of reference. It was going right over my head
Sean
there.
the Sheep.
I vaguely remember Sean the Sheep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tigger, I do remember,
Tigger.
of course, because it was the bouncy tiger that was a
Yeah,
colleague of Winnie the Pooh.
He was an unusual character, Tigger, wasn't he? I'm not entirely sure what species he was. He was on his own right. Anyway.
Captain Tom.
Captain Tom, of course. It was the incredible hero that's
Legend.
been walking around his garden and raised over £20 million for the NHS. I quite like that one. Or we have Cedric. Now, I'm not sure where Cedric comes from. I'm not sure the cultural reference there, but Cedric, that's one of them too. So we've got those 4 names.
This is no ordinary lamb, I've got to say. Well, I mean, everyone loves a lamb, of course, but this is a lamb from a breed of sheep called Bora Rays. Bora Rays are one of the rare breeds of sheep, and they originated on the island of St Kilda, which is an archipelago off the west coast of Scotland, very remote archipelago. Now, up to the 18th century, all of the Scottish sheep were what we call dun-faced sheep, and they were a breed of sheep that had been living there since the Iron Age. Then they took them out to these islands and they started crossing them with things like the Scottish blackface, which they brought from the mainland. And it's that gave rise to these what we call Hebridean blackface or Bora Ray sheep. Now, in the 1930s, the island was evacuated. They took all the people off. It was deemed too remote for a place for people to live. And they brought they left the sheep there to start with, that's right. But there were very few in number. So later on, they brought a few over to the mainland. And we started breeding them here so that we can make sure that this breed doesn't disappear completely. Now, they were originally bred for their fleeces and for meat, but they're very small. They're amongst the smallest of all of the sheep that we have. So these days, I'm very pleased to say they're used for conservation grazing, and that's why we've got the boar-away sheep here. None of our sheep have ever been turned into anything edible. And they've all been living long and healthy lives, I've got to say, doing their nibbling duty on some of the fields around here. And they're really good at that. And that's why other people keep them. So they're not as rare as they used to be. Numbers have gone up. I think there are about 500 ewes now, maybe 900 rams, maybe even a few more. But they've got another one added to the list.
So get those names in. Tell us what you think our little lamb should be called out, those 4 names. And by the end of the broadcast, our little lamb will have a name. It will be hashtag, no longer hashtag name that lamb. It will be hashtag something else.
We always love experts in the UK. It's part of our tradition. We admire people who acquire knowledge through a lifetime of exploration, curiosity and experience. And very fortunately, sometimes we put them on TV and people can see those skills for themselves and aspire to acquiring themselves. And years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting a then young man, and now slightly older man, but still younger than me, who immediately I recognised as a brilliant naturalist, an absolutely brilliant naturalist. His speciality is insects, although he's good on birds, and a particular fan of ring ouzels, but his speciality is insects. I'm very pleased today we're going to be joined from his garden in Devon by the one and only Nick Baker. And Nick, I think, is going to tell us something about beetles. Nick, are you there?
I think I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think you most certainly are. From my perspective, you are very definitely there.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear. I have to say, Chris, I'm sharing the somewhat unkept feeling at the moment. I'm thinking maybe it is time to return to the 80s, and I think if you get your bleach out, you can go all peroxide. I can go for the ponytail again, and it'll be just like the old days.
I'm on the case.
I even had painted nails yesterday. It's getting really desperate down here. I live with two. My wife and my daughter got bored on Saturday and they attacked me with little brushes and toxic chemicals and painted my nails. This time yesterday, I had blue nails. They're beautiful.
I don't mind. I think under these circumstances, you're going to get away with anything. That you might as well try it. If it's a yearning you've always had, just go ahead, mate. You know I'll support you.
Exactly, and this is very topical, of course, because all I want to do really, I don't want to do grown-up things like earn a crust and things like that, and I just want to play. And because all the chores and all the things that go with being a professional have effectively evaporated for me, I'm able to spend, if I want to spend 3 hours watching a pond skater sucking the juices out of a fly, I can. It's like being 10 years old again, but with no one looking over your shoulder and criticising and saying, isn't it time you hung the washing up or emptied the dishwasher? It's wonderful. I'm actually enjoying it. Obviously, it's a silver lining to a pretty bad situation, and I've got no idea how and when we're all going to get out of this. But it's as a naturalist, this is a dream come true. Anyway, what I'm going to show you. I've got. I'm really into. All the spring is really happening at the moment. There's all sorts of things going on in the garden, and we've got some. I've got a few things here, but we're very lucky here on Dartmoor because that's where I'm coming from. We've got some of the things I look out for about the same time as we're looking out for the swallows, and the very first of the migrant birds is we start getting things like that turning up in the hedgerows. I don't know if you can see that on this. There we are. I'm just trying to work out how good. I don't know how good that picture is, but I'm not sure. It was a bit early for that sort of behaviour. But these are oil beetles. These are actually violet oil beetles, and we're very lucky to have quite a good population here in and around the garden. He's not actually mating at the moment. The smaller one is the male, obviously, sitting on her back. He's also got these amazing kinked antennae, which he sort of wraps around the female's antennae when he's actually mating. How he actually gets the business done, because he's considerably shorter than she is. She's like kind of a long wheelbase truck, an articulated truck full of eggs. She's got thousands of eggs in that big fat, that big fat abdomen. And I love these things. They are they're just the sign of spring for me, or one of them many. So if you're lucky enough to have a little, oh look, I don't know if you can see that, they've just done, because I dropped them, can you see that gooey yellow stuff on them? That is what gives them their name, oil beetle. That's cantharidin, or contains a horrible, nasty chemical, cantharidin. I've got these little yellow blotches of it on my fingers. It's really wish I hadn't done that. Yeah, it's really quite nasty. But that's why they can walk about seemingly bold as brass in the hedgerows, feeding on nice succulent celandines and daffodil leaves. And they love the juicy stuff. And they basically sequester all the toxins in their diet, and then leak it out of little glands, one-way glands, like little valves on their legs. And that's why they get called the oil beetles, because it's a really nasty stuff. And they can walk. I mean, being black is as good as being brightly coloured in the insect world. It's a warning colour. You can see them everywhere. They're just walking about. As soon as you get a bit of sun, a nice sunny flowery bank, there's these beetles everywhere. But they're brilliant. Have you got anywhere where you are, Chris?
No, we don't see them here. We have to go to downland to get the nearest oil beetles where we are. So, yeah, a rare sight for us. We always get very excited if we find an oil beetle.
Well, I get very excited as well, and they're common here. But what it means is where there's oil beetles, there's lots of other good things as well. Because obviously, not obviously, they have a crazy life cycle. So these beetles they're at it at the moment. They're doing what lots of things are doing in the spring, and to then go around and start digging little holes, and you can see this happening. I mean, if you're in a good oil beetle area, and there's patches of them scattered throughout the UK, all the way up into Scotland, and there's another one very similar on the go at the moment as well, which is the black oil beetle. Very, very similar. Obviously, not quite as metallic, not quite as green. But very, very similar. And what they're both doing is feeding up, mating, and then the females are digging little holes in very friable soil and laying these clusters of thousands of eggs, tiny little eggs, which in a couple of weeks' time will hatch out. And this is where the really cool stuff starts. These little tiny eggs hatch, and these tiny little larvae, not like maggots or grubs, like a lot of beetle larvae. These are hyperactive, really furtive, kind of aggressive looking little things, and they scarper up the nearest flower, whether it's a dandelion or a celandine, and they sit there, and they sit in the flower, they cluster, and they sit there with these big, horrible sort of hooky legs pointing up. And on the end of each leg are 3 claws, and that's why they're called triungulans. And as a bee, any insect comes down to suck the nectar or collect the pollen, these little things just grab on with these grappling hooks and get dragged off to wherever that insect's going. And this is why the female lays so many, because it's a massive lottery, because these grubs have to get on, or these larvae have to hook on to the correct species of bee, and it has to be one of the mining bees. And they've got to hook on and get taken back to the nest of that mining bee, where they jump off and then start eating the brood of that mining bee. So they are parasitoids, effectively. So this is a parasitoid beetle that relies on a very specific couple of species of solitary bee in order to exist. So just seeing one oil beetle is a miracle of luck and chance. So they're fabulous things. And you can actually look out for the triangulans as well. They're very, very furtive. If you want to know, there's some pictures on my Instagram feed that I took a couple of years ago in my local churchyard. Very, very exciting. As exciting as finding the oil beetle itself. But this is amazing. They do all this hitchhiking business. It's incredible how they can just get through those little bottlenecks. And of course, because they need the bees, you have to have a good mixture of nectar-rich wildflower, rough grass, and bare patches of soil, which, as we know, is the perfect place to support a whole variety of other species, not just the insects, but those are the plants and all the things that go with it. So they're a good indicator of a good place to be. No pun intended.
Fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff. I mean, these insect life histories, all of these parasitoids and the hyperparasitoids, those that are parasites of parasites, are simply extraordinary. And when you watch sci-fi films such as Alien and so on and so forth, you see where people get their ideas from, can't you?
Oh, I mean, this is it. I mean, they are. I keep getting asked what my favourite animal is at the moment, because I'm doing these little live Instagram it's to keep me sane as much as anything every day. And I get asked a lot, what's your favourite animal? And it is a wasp, actually, even though I'm talking about beetles today. I like wasps. I like all wasps. But my favourite wasps are the ones that most people don't notice, which are, as you said, are the parasites and the parasitoids. By the way, parasite, I mean, I know you know that, but some of the viewers may not. But a parasite is something that lives with its host, so it doesn't necessarily negatively affect its host's function, whereas a parasitoid gets inside the host, does its business, and usually ends in the host's demise. So unfortunately for the bees that take on the larvae of this particular oil beetle, they don't generally make it. So that's the end of them. So they're a parasitoid. But then you've got the parasites, which, as you're saying, Chris, these beautiful little wasps and flies that will often lay their eggs in larvae of other insects. Caterpillars of various moths and butterflies are a very common host. And then you've got these wasps that then are able to detect which caterpillars have already got a parasite in them. Some of them will inject through into the parasite within the host. And it gets like Russian dolls. And then there's parasites, there's hyperparasites. Then there's secondary hyperparasites. Then there's tertiary hyperparasites. And I believe there's even quaternary hyperparasites. So it is animals within animals within animals with animals. And that's when it just becomes mind-blowing, which is why, even though I've only got a tiny little garden here, I will never, ever, ever be bored. And, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact I had to earn money, I'd be fine. Just watching these things. Yesterday I spent I was supposed to go up the allotment, an allotment at the back here, which has never looked tidier. I was supposed to be helping my wife prepare the ground for getting some of the vegetables in. And I just happened upon a zebra spider, which is one of our fabulous little charismatic little creatures. And I just went on this sort of like whimsical wandering, following this spider around on the shed with a camera. The spider then caught this little micro moth, of which I cannot identify. But this is the joy of it. You can actually, I've got time to try and work out what that moth was. So I mean, when does this happen? When I was 10, I didn't have the knowledge or the library or the experience. And now it's like being blessed with a second childhood, but with a little bit of the joys of being an adult. But anyway, the point is I ended up chasing this spider around. I don't know what the point is. What is the point? I chased the spider around, photographed it, really enjoyed it, and then tried to see the male. It's brilliant.
The point is you got out of digging over the allotment. That was the point.
Yeah. I don't think my wife was that worried. I think as long as I'm out of her hair and I'm not moaning and not worrying about stuff, I think at the moment, and if she gets on my back and said, "Come on, you should basically be doing the dig," we've always got tomorrow or the day after or the day after that. But can I show you? Have we got time to show you another beetle, Chris? Megan?
Yeah, quickly then. Go on.
All right, this is another one. This is slightly more widespread. These here are bloody nose beetles, slightly more widespread. But very similar in their often get mistaken for oil beetles. They're the classic beetle. This is the biggest of the leaf beetles. Anywhere you've got this stuff, I don't know what you call it down in Hampshire. It's cleavers to most people, but in Sussex, where I grew up, it's called sticky willy. It's one of the bedstraws that.
Well, we have a more polite name for it here. We call it goosegrass.
Goosegrass. What's wrong with Sticky Willy? It's just the person's name. Anyway, goosegrass. Yes, it is. That's right. I know that one as well. So these beetles love this stuff. And anywhere you've got goosegrass or Sticky Willy growing out of the hedges, have a little look for these things. Again, they like it sunny. They don't have a complicated life cycle like the oil beetle. They're much more rounded as well, but similar colour. I just think they're dead cute. I think if you're going to like a beetle, that's the one to go for. The males in particular have these great big feet. This one is a male. He's got huge, great big tarsi on the end of his legs, which he uses to grip onto the female. But keep an eye out for those, or get your viewers to keep an eye out for those and enjoy them as well. And the other thing is, I keep dropping everything. They also produce anthraquinones. They sequester the anthraquinones from inside the plant. So they take the toxins out of the plant, concentrate them inside their own blood, inside their hemolymph, and then they, when they are dropped by a naturalist, they will then vomit up a little dollop of this red stuff, and that's worth a little lick as well, because that is really quite potent. And again, it's another animal that walks about boldly, knowing that everything else except for the unwitting will realise that it is quite toxic, and that's how it gets away doing what it's doing. But they've got amazing. Later on in the year, you'll actually see these lovely big like quilted caterpillars, and they're sort of almost metallic sleeping bags. They'll be on the same stuff, on the cleavers and goosegrass, chomping away on that. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. These are two of the favourite spring beetles, but there's loads of other things happening out there at the moment. There's the first of the tiger beetles. I mean, the news is this weekend people have seen swifts. Some of the first swifts have returned. So obviously, at about that time, as soon as someone shouts swift, I start looking for tiger beetles. The tiger beetles are beginning to emerge as well. So yeah, lots of brilliant stuff happening at the moment. Even if the larger human world is not quite such a happy place, certainly nature is full of some good stuff.
Nick, thanks ever so much, as ever. Fantastic.
Pleasure.
We love all your chemical descriptions and your little taste, your little taste and licking the bloody nose beetles vomit. It's just what young actors should be doing at this time of year, of course. Take care of yourself and just get the spade out and get up to that allotment, mate.
I will, and I want you to see your hair bleached, Chris. I tell you, when you decide to do it, we'll all do it at once.
Fantastic.
Nick, thanks ever so much.
Stay sane, stay healthy.
You too. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
So you can follow Nick on Twitter at @bugboybaker. So make sure you go and do that.
And Instagram, where he's doing his daily updates. So.
Yeah, so go and follow him, and there'll be some fantastic stuff all about insects and what's going on in his garden, maybe some allotment stuff as well. So spring has officially sprung, and the animals are, well, they're pretty much having a bit of fun at the moment, aren't they? They are breeding, of course. And there's lots of different breeding systems, which are really, really interesting. Now, last week, we showed you this clip of a dunnock doing what we believe to be a territorial or displaying behaviour. Have a look at this.
Top of a fence.
On top of a fence, jumping up and down. Something a bit bizarre. You see them on the ground.
Yeah, I see them on the ground doing this the whole time. I've never seen one up on a fence, but no, we don't really have a fence where the dunnocks hang out here, so maybe that's what it is. But I mean, I see them frequently beneath there's a bay tree by the feeder, where they get a bit agitated with one another. So yeah, typically that behaviour I'd see on the ground. But
there's something a bit more interesting, well, not more interesting, there's something very different about dunnocks, which is very different from other birds of its size, other songbirds and things like that. Now, generally, when we're talking about songbirds in the breeding season, we're talking about monogamy. Now, when I say monogamy, I don't mean lifetime monogamy, I mean seasonally monogamous. So birds will pair up with one another, and for that season they will be monogamous. Now, that's not to say that they are entirely sexually monogamous. When the tail feathers are turned, there might be some extra pair copulations going on. However, largely it will be that pair that stick with one another. Dunnocks have a slightly different system. Dunnocks, honestly. Well, they do engage with monogamy, but more rarely. The most common system of dunnocks is polyandry, which means there are one female to two males.
Or more.
Or more, sometimes. But that's a whole different system, which we'll get into. But the most common is polyandry. Now, what happens is they need to copulate all of the time. Males can copulate up to 100 times a day. So a female, if she's got two males, that's 200 times a day. But you want to be protecting your female because, of course, if you're that male, you want to ensure that you're the one that is fathering the offspring. So there is, if you've got two males, there will be a dominant one and a subordinate male. The dominant one will be much more proactive at protecting the female, sticking with her all the time. However, when, as I said, the tail feathers are turned, maybe you go off to catch a sneaky little insect or fruit or something, then the subordinate male will take its opportunity and will mate with that female, and the female will proactively look to mate with that subordinate individual as well. So what you can see here is a fantastic clip that was sent in to us. Very, very interesting behaviour. Have a look at this.
Got to look very carefully because they're quite small.
Have a look at what that male is. Male is the one behind, female is the one up front. So that is something that was discovered only about 30 years ago. Nick Davis actually suggested the reason why.
Only 30
years ago. We saw this behaviour in dunnocks, but we weren't exactly sure what they were up to, what they were doing. So this footage got sent in to Nick Davis, and 30 years ago he released a paper that kind of confirmed what they were doing. So what they are doing is something called cloacal pecking. Now the male pecks at the cloaca of the female, causing her to eject a sperm package from the previous male. This helps to ensure that when he's with cloacal pecking, his sperm will be more likely to fertilise those eggs. when she lays them, which is pretty fantastic. It's a kind of a pre-breeding copulation behaviour that we see when a female is mating with more than one male at any time. I think it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is fascinating. Sperm competition is something which is really big in the natural world, and we're beginning to learn lots more about it, not just in birds, but in many other species. But you can witness this behaviour. I've seen it here, literally in your garden if you have these birds, but they're normally doing it right. That was on the path in the open. When I see them doing it, they're under the bushes, so you've got to be watching quite carefully.
And then what they do is they do DNA tests of the brood, which is quite interesting. You see the percentages of the dominant male and the subordinate male, and interestingly it's about 50-50. It's about equal. So what is the cost of being dominant? Because that's quite a costly thing. You've got to
sing,
there's all, you've got to sing, you've got to protect your females. So what is the benefit if you're getting 50-50? But males are very good at determining if they were successful in parenting some of that brood, and if they think that they haven't copulated enough, then that male won't assist in raising their young. But of course, for the female, there are two benefits to this. She's got two males. She doesn't have to work quite so hard, so that's really good. And the second one, of course, is like a genetic safety net, because of course, if one male's not quite as good, not quite as fit, then if you mate with the second, then the chances of reproductive success are increased greatly. So amazing, dunnocks sexual behaviour.
Amazing stuff. All happening on your lawn, under your bushes, if you're lucky enough to have dunnocks there. Another person who was very lucky to have a bird in her garden was Alan Brackley. He sent us this photograph. Look at this, not a dunnock, no. This is a real exotic, a hoopoo. Now, hoopoos breed further south in Europe, but this year there's quite a lot of flyovers. They get their navigation a little bit wrong, and they turn up in the south of England, but they turn up over pretty much all of the UK every spring, and they will hang around on people's lawns. They've got a very long, sharp bill, which they use for probing for things like leather jackets and other invertebrates in the soil. But you're very lucky if you've had one in your garden. Alan
I was
Brackley.
so envious.
Yeah, I know.
I was very envious.
Fantastic.
I love a hoopoo.
I love a hoopoo.
Love a hoopoo.
Amazing haircut. A bit like that. Sort of, no, not like that.
Not quite like that. Well, we'll be after I've done your haircut.
Yeah, thanks. I'm looking forward to looking like a hoopoo.
I'll do my best. So Sandy McLeod also sent in this photo to South Isolated Bird Club. It is a beautiful image of a mute swan. Have a look at this with its raised wings and that gorgeous sunset. Oh, I think it's beautiful. And I was just talking about sexual systems. Very interestingly, swans are uniquely very, very monogamous. They are lifetime monogamous. So they're not like those songbirds, which are seasonally monogamous. They will stay with their partner for life, and they won't engage in extra pair copulations because we believe that they are, able to get better reproductive success from staying with that same partner because they're able to learn more about their environment and one another, which is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, swans, lifetime monogamy.
Lifetime monogamy. Very rare in birds.
Indeed it is. Okay, skull of the day.
Skull of the day, of course. So we showed you this at the beginning. Very, very distinctive. I think lots of you, I'm just seeing if anyone has got this one right. So yes, lots of people did actually. Facebook, we've got Beth, Anise, Maria, Claire, Sarah. Twitter, Mostly Wild, Humane Wildlife, Michelle, Emily, Paul, Morgan, Holly, Alec, Clive, YouTube, Alicia, Beth, Oliver, Simon, Sal, Paul. Oh, there's loads of you getting this one right, so well done. Of course, it is the iconic badger.
Yeah.
It's very, very distinctive. When you feel this skull, the bone is very, very thick. It has to be a very, very strong skull because, of course, they are digging through quite hard terrain, lots of rocks, pushing things forward. But, of course, the sagittal crest. Now, the sagittal crest is really important because that's where the jaw muscles attach. So they've got a very, very strong bite, haven't they? And you can see the indentation here on the bottom of the jaw. So this is where the muscle will attach. It will then go round and it will attach onto the top of the skull here. In fact, the males have the largest sagittal crest, and there was recorded the largest one is about 15 millimeters.
15 millimeters?
15 millimeters, the largest.
I can tell you one thing. One time I was collecting badger skulls because I was watching a large number of sets in the New Forest, and frequently you'll find them not in good condition like this, but they would have died underground, and the animals then dig them out when they're cleaning out their sets. And I measured all of the sagittal crests because this extension of bone here continues to grow throughout the animal's life, and what you see is that the older males have the highest sagittal crest. So I shall have to dig into my archives to see what the maximum height of the sagittal crest is. The other characteristics, though, are the canines at the front, the prominent molars at the back of the thing, and the fact that the sutures, all of those little cracks that you typically see in skulls, are fused. All about giving it strength, because in the past it would have been being attacked by bears and wolves and all sorts of other potential predators. There we
Beautiful
are.
skull. It's very soft, isn't it? I love that skull.
Name that lamb.
Name that lamb.
Name
Wow.
that lamb.
The answers are in, and I have to say, many of you went for the same one. So 2,524 of you put your answers in. And I have to say, lamb is called Captain Tom.
Captain Tom.
Captain Tom. Of course, 60% voted for Captain Tom. Second was 22% with Cedric. Then we had Sean at 13 and Tig at was 5. So Captain Tom. We can start calling him Captain Tom. Brilliant.
Captain Tom. I imagine there will be any number of things named after Captain Tom.
But it's great to have a
and
lamb.
deservedly so. What a remarkable
hero.
bloke. What an absolutely inspirational, remarkable bloke. Well, that's about all we've got time for. I can't wait to get this off.
I would just like to say a quick
go on.
happy birthday
Yeah.
to Karen Pulsford. Happy birthday. We hope you have a fantastic day. And of course, with the live webcams as well, we'd like to credit Latvian Wildlife Fund too, who are putting this all
Latvian
together.
Fund for Nature.
Latvian Fund for Nature.
Yes, those are the ones that are doing the white-tailed eagle nest. So check out Latvian Fund for Nature and that white-tailed eagle nest, which is truly fantastic. We're going to be back tomorrow with Lizzie Daly. She's going to be telling us about Welsh seabirds.
Seabirds, I believe, on the coast. But yeah, some brilliant stuff from Lizzie coming up.
Enjoy your day and stay safe.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.